So using metadata, and we're going to talk about the good, maybe the not so good, and maybe the ugly, because we want to give people an accurate view of metadata. Like, what's your favorite part of using metadata right now?
Yeah, that's a great question. I've always loved the pipeline impact reporting, opportunity reporting. And then I think it was just a few months back, I realized, or my CS manager with you guys pointed out that I can look when I'm in the reports home screen, I can look through each account list at impressions and clicks by account, which is, you know, I think I wish those would merge up or aggregate into a single thing I could export and have click level influence, which would be crazy. But the the reporting like is a leapfrogging capability for attribution, right? It doesn't mean you get attribution for all your channels, but for the when Andrew and I are talking about, like, we love testing here, right, on paid social, because you get to pick the people, right, rather than just like a keyword or something like that, which has its own place. Being able to see how different groups and campaigns and messages progress through pipeline is, you just can't not have that. And I know a lot of B2B marketers have zero attribution beyond top of the funnel and hoping that the lead sources and UTMs come through all the way down to the revenue pieces. And they often don't, because there's so many complexities. Just to give a quick example of why I love this so much is, if you want to capture attribution in Marketo and Salesforce, you have to create as many open fields as there are touches, unless you get a separate attribution tool. Meaning, if someone comes to your website through paid search, and then someone through paid social, the same person through paid social, the same person through organic social, through email, from an SDR, through marketing email, right? You'd have to have, I just listed 4 or 5 different sets of fields in order for you to go into Salesforce and see all these touches up front. That's why most people do adopt attribution tools, is to collect those. And the fact that I can just really quickly get a heads up on pipeline progress just out of the box based on an MQL timestamp. Amazing.
Love that. So Andrew, I'll kick it over to you, and then we'll go back and forth here a little bit.
Yeah, I think I would split it between the ops is everyday type of thing of either creating new campaigns or just analyzing. Like, I'll just walk through my cadence in the morning. Like, Crystal, who I work with, is on like the West Coast. So I'm typically going through like our 4 or 5 main channels, just seeing how month to date and all like the pacing is for budget and leads, MQLs, SQLs, etc. And so when I get all my spend in there, I go into metadata, and it's very easy for me to, like, using like the budget groups, like we use that a lot, looking at the different, we typically have a few, like 2 to 3 different like kind of prospecting offers, remarketing offers, and then we run a ton of video, which has changed a lot. We used to run like no video, and now that's our main like prospecting, like demand create strategy. And it's great now. Like we are, I think metadata has most of the native metrics, like for LinkedIn and Facebook now, that used to not be a thing. So it's really easy to even see. We used to not be able to see. I'm trying to think of a metric that we use. I can't remember if engagement mark is in there yet, but like for video, like those things are super helpful.
We're working on it. We've been testing that out, like, externally. And that's one of the things that we're always trying to do, is just figure out what do people want and make sure that we then get that into our roadmap too. So I'll let you keep going.
Just, I think, like, to put it more concisely, in LinkedIn, it's so difficult to look at everything you can't just open up if you have even all your campaigns in one campaign group, you can't just open that up and understand how performance was yesterday. I guess you could if you only have a few campaigns, but we have so many campaigns running. So it's just very easy to look at what is actual performance right now. And then I would say, like, on the more like revenue attribution, because we are running some like customer retention ABM campaigns, some, obviously we're part of those Cisco WebEx ecosystem. So a lot of ABM campaigns that very targeted accounts. So I'm every Tuesday for a sales and marketing meeting able to pull, hey, here's just some simple like impressions views for like the top accounts, even able to look at this is in the LinkedIn platform now, but like looking at who's actually engaging with our ads. But then like Evan's talked about this already, but looking at like the opportunities that are triggered or influenced are huge now. I'm using that for my own personal like growth, honestly. Like metadata literally is like feeling like some of my LinkedIn resume, because like I'm able to show, hey, the campaigns that we're running, we're actually impacting like pipeline, which it's very easy for sometimes like the CMO or like the CFO, like it's like they scoff at like paid social impacting things. It's all Google Ads, Capterra. But I think for any demand gen team that is like looking at the holistic picture, like we do know that there is a significant impact on the paid social aspects. I think being able to look at that is huge. I literally did that this morning. Like there was an opportunity that was triggered for one of our ABM campaigns and was easily able to send that. I think with Salesforce, there's more dynamic, like sending those things. It's a bit more manual for me with HubSpot, or maybe it's just my lack of knowledge, but both like the ops and like the revenue attribute, like all those things together are super easy to do. So I feel like I was just saying like everything in metadata, but the audience
this is unscripted for everybody who's listening and who will watch the recording. So I didn't plan any answers. You guys knew the questions, but we're not telling you what to say. So we have a couple questions here on using metadata, and this one just came in from one of the attendees who I think had to bounce for a meeting since we're right at the hour. You all know this because you're users, but the way in which we structure campaigns in metadata is different than how the ad channels themselves typically recommend that you structure your campaigns. So the question is, knowing that, do you feel like it's difficult to leave metadata now because of how you've been structuring your campaigns? We'll start with you first, Andrew.
Yeah, that was the reason I gave you for renewal. It literally was from an operational standpoint and like a time saving standpoint. Like both Chris and I come from agency backgrounds, so we could probably know how to use LinkedIn and Facebook natively. But going back to that, it would be like going back to dial-up internet. So that was like a huge. You can use that in a campaign if you want.
You might see your face on the homepage with that quote here in a week or two, but keep going.
So yeah, it was so crucial. So I think it wasn't like a learning curve, but it was very different. And I think Evan outlined this earlier, but like say you're targeting 5 audiences with 3 different creatives. Like that's 15 different campaigns because they're one-to-one. It took me a while to see how many different tests we should be running. But I would say, and this is one of the I think this is probably something that you guys have on your site somewhere, but just the ability to get to those learnings much, much faster. I see it in your own marketing too, like different ads or campaigns that are working. I now know like to tell our design team, hey, again, this is something I literally did yesterday. Hey, no, I want like this background because I already know this is going to perform better. That might sound like too specific, but like we've spent a lot of money on paid social. So I'm not talking about we spent $500. It's this is like hundreds of thousands of dollars. So I think being able to get to those learnings much faster is huge. So
awesome. Evan, what about you?
Yeah, it's a bummer if Sophia took off because I definitely feel like I want to understand where this question is coming from. Get the language locked into your variant campaign structure. I don't think of myself as locked in. I think, yeah, kind of like Andrew pointed out, I actually been running multivariate testing at scale as a service for a bunch of different software companies, Xerox, Kodak, even the Tile Council in North America, fake brands ahead of new product launches, a bunch of fun stuff. And I would give reports that were like, here's 164 combinations, right? And if you roll them up these different ways, you get these different insights, right? So here's the creative type that performs the best. Here's the audience by creative that performs the best. Ultimately, all that should feed back into, I was doing it for like research, but if you're actually just optimizing for pipeline or for acquisition, right, that should feed directly back into the shifts you make in your budget in the ad platforms. Doing that was impossible. There was one startup here in Seattle that went under in parody that had basically promised to do this with display and paid social at scale, like crazy cool stuff through machine learning, but essentially it was not quite as robust or well built out. And so when I found metadata, it really clicked for me that I don't really care what the structure on LinkedIn native ads is or Facebook ads or whatever metadata is doing. It does mean I have to dig into the UI of metadata to best look at my campaigns because it's the only place where it rolls up together. But I don't mind because ultimately I'm getting, it's like having someone like a virtual assistant half time who is just, and you mentioned this in your time trade-offs, Andrew, right? But who is just changing the budgets on your campaigns and pausing ones that are underperforming. You can set all these rules in metadata for what you consider like way too underperformant. And it'll fund the ones that perform better. And so like it eventually you get comfortable with it. You have a set it and forget it where you're just like, in a couple of weeks, I'm going to come back to this campaign and see what metadata figured out was like my best, most resonant, most effective lead driver.